coming out as queer or trans is a big deal, right? I mean, for some of us, this could be the scariest thing that we've ever done up until this point in our lives. And this becomes especially challenging if we have to come out to someone who doesn't quite see eye to eye with us. So quite naturally, as a way of preparing and protecting ourselves in these situations, we are going to look towards this coming out experience, and then we're going to form all sorts of commentary about it. So we might be thinking things along the lines of how we want it to go, or we could be thinking about how terrible it's going to be or how liberating it's going to be. And so then usually what happens in these situations is that we become so immersed in our personal storyline and our ideas about how we think it's going to go that we end up engaging with the person that we're coming out to based off of whatever that narrative is that's guiding us at the time of coming out. So whatever that personal story is that we're bringing into the situation, all because we aren't able to recognize what's happening and then step out of this secret or subtle personal agenda, kind of like a mechanism, which is operating in the background. So for example, we might shade the truth and be really soft and delicate about what we have to say because we don't want to offend this other person. Or we might project and get super defensive because we're feeling attacked, even which is separate than what's actually happening on the other side of things. I'm just talking about what we are bringing to the table. So we could also get really argumentative and we could end up blaming this other person because we feel like it's their fault that we're suffering. Or it could just whatever flavor of this self-protective coping mechanism and however it chooses to present itself in that coming out moment. And while, all of these reactions and emotions and narratives are totally valid from our perspective, and it makes total sense why coming out is so challenging for most of us, but still, it's going to be really important for us to recognize that we, as super sensitive, closeted people who are putting it all on the line, it's inevitable that we're going to bring a certain amount of baggage into each of these conversations. The baggage is justified, yeah, of course, but it's still baggage nonetheless. And so that's what we're going to want to focus on in this conversation. And because the thing that we don't want to end up happening is that our story and our personal narrative ends up negatively impacting the coming out conversation. Or even worse than that, it becomes such a burden because it's weighing on us so intensely that it clouds our vision or it overwhelms us to the point where it's we're not really able to operate from the place of empowerment and clarity. So that's a really easy trap. It's kind of inevitable that we're going to fall into it, but I'm just wanting to articulate kind of something that a pattern that can be happening in the background so that we can become aware of it and then we can address it. So that's going to be exactly why we need an orientation or a value system or a desired outcome that is going to be standing outside of all that internal drama and it's just playing on repeat. Obviously, we're bringing it into these situations. So that's what we're talking about in this conversation. We're going to be identifying a quality which can ground us, stabilize us throughout this coming out process. So let's consider what could this guiding principle be? What's something that is even more important than our desire to be accepted or our desire to be embraced or even our desire to have this fairy tale coming out story? Well, my suggestion is that reality is going to be the most important thing in these situations. More important than an exchange that we're having with this person where we just feel like they're totally holding us and embracing us and loving us. And so when I say reality, we could also say truth or the heart of the matter. We could call it ground zero. And when it comes to a situation, as monumental as coming out, reality is going to be your best friend. So why is that? Well, it's going to be because aligning with reality is the most effective way of clearly perceiving a situation straight on. And then not only that, but it's also going to help you recognize that what you want more than anything else is truth. And if you're able to recognize that and kind of lean into that perspective, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to let go of control and allow for everyone else who's involved to just be whoever they're wanting to be in that moment and responding to you in whatever way is natural to them. And so if you are aligned with reality, and then let's say someone says something that hurts you or reacts in a way that you feel is like disrespectful, instead of the grounding effect that this perspective is going to have is that instead of taking it personally, taking this person's reaction personally, and then becoming crippled by the pain of that moment, you can step back and recognize that, okay, in this moment, my overarching priority, what's more important than anything else, is to just allow for this situation to unfold exactly as it's supposed to be. And so the reason that I'm suggesting that reality is the most important quality to be aware of in your coming out process is because speaking your truth and exposing yourself in this way is, it's just something that is really polarizing. And it's going to elicit strong emotions and reactions from almost everyone who you're coming out to. And so that polarity creates like this really, it's a charged atmosphere. And if we were going to take any of that on, like in addition to the weight that we're already feeling in just like trying to manage our own emotions and our own process, so if we were going to add additional weight to that situation and then end up leveraging that center point within ourselves because we're investing our emotions into the reactions of others, that would just be too much pressure to bear. Like it would push us over the edge of being somebody who is capable of navigating this situation in a way that just feels graceful. When we have this personal narrative that is operating in the background and it's secretly imposing ourselves on the situation. What I mean by that is it's kind of like we're just forming these unspoken expectations that things are just going to turn out in a certain way because we just have this idea that it's going to go one way or the other. And then based off of like, obviously when reality happens, it's always different than the narrative, than the story, the idea that we think it's going to come out as. So then that incongruence is just going to cause just even more conflict in a moment that we're feeling most likely lots of conflicting emotions. And it's just like a high pressure situation from our perspective. But like I said, the antidote to all of this is, of course, is just aligning with reality and reminding yourself that however it's supposed to go, that's what I want. And however that other person is supposed to react, that's what I want. And while no, it might not feel good, still I can recognize that truth, reality is the theme of this moment. And I am realizing that the reciprocal of me having the courage to express my truth, the like equal and opposite of that is my capacity to allow others to express theirs, right? So even if I don't like it, and if ignorance and judgment is that person's truth in the moment, then that's just what it is. So of course, there are times when people aren't able to see eye to eye with us, but it's also important to realize that this world is full of people who are on our side, right? And they do see the world in similar ways that we do. And so in the same way, there are going to be people in your life that totally embrace you and who celebrate you and who radiate this acceptance and compassion and even this excitement when you tell them your truth. Not necessarily because they care so much about you being queer, but it's more along the lines of that they recognize that you are being yourself, and they understand how powerful that is, and that they see somebody who is taking steps into a more truthful and authentic life. And from that perspective, they're celebrating you for just being you. So if that's what happens, then great. Like ideally, you get to have one or two of those situations in your coming out saga. And that would be amazing. But if I were you, I wouldn't invest too much of your energy trying to secure those kinds of positive reactions and outcomes for yourself. Because, of course, on the other side of that coin are people who have beliefs and judgments that are just going to cloud their vision. And it's going to get in their way of their ability to see you clearly. And so it's those kinds of people that make this whole coming out thing like really challenging, like over the top challenging for queer people. Because it's like in those moments, they've got their drama, you got your drama. And then the charge between those two people who are bringing all sorts of narratives and stories and ideas, and then it just, goes from there. So, but the prescription to that kind of a situation, the way that you can kind of neutralize that charge is going to be aligning with reality. And because, like I said, when you come out, this is an act of truth that you are initiating. And so in order to prevent yourself from trying to manipulate the situation or deluding yourself or lashing out at this other person, which would be kind of counterproductive to the environment of this truthful conversation, what you're going to need is this kind of stability that comes from making the distinction in your mind that, okay, no matter how this situation turns out, above all else, I want the truth. But I don't want that just for me. I want that for them as well. And even if that truth hurts, it's still the truth. Because I realize that a painful reality is the extent of that pain or how like deeply it impacts us. That's pale in comparison to the pain of wanting reality to be something other than what it is, right? Because like that's a pain that goes above and beyond just traditional, I'm feeling a lot of pain. It's like a special type of pain when we're fighting back against reality and we're trying to impose our own ideas onto the world. So instead of wasting your energy trying to change this other person or taking their drama personally, my suggestion is just to see this situation for what it is. This is just the truth of the moment. You're getting to the heart of the matter. You're digging down into the truth of who you are. Just like it's not a positive or a negative thing. It's just like, this is what is. Like there doesn't have to be a narrative attached to who you are and how you, like, that's just what it is, right? And so the narrative and the interpretation and the idea of it is positive, negative, like that comes after. That's like down the line. So we want to stay just in the center point of the situation. So when I'm saying that, or when I'm suggesting that you can kind of sink into this mentality that reality is going to be the most important thing for you right now, what I'm implying is that this is the time to go all in, right? And to just rip off the Band-Aid, completely expose the truth. Not just the truth of you, but the truth of everybody around you. And that way you're going to be able to come out on the other side of this situation or a series of situations. You're going to be able to look back and you're going to have this clear view of, well, not only yourself, but everyone else who is in it. And then you won't be deluding yourself by thinking that, oh, things were supposed to go differently than how they did. Or you won't be under these false pretenses. If the truth isn't exposed, then there can be just like this, people pretending to be on the same page when they're really not. And you're able to create this truthful situation all because you place the emphasis of your coming out experience on reality or truth. And so now you know what's what, right? And now you have a better idea about who is going to be joining you in this new world that you're creating for yourself. But like I said, that isn't going to happen if you try and drag somebody along with you or force them or manipulate them into accepting you. So my suggestion with this strategy is to really just hold your head high, say what needs to be said, do so with kindness and compassion, and then leave it at that. And now that you have a better idea about the importance of this truth, reality concept, orientation within the trans and queer experience, I want you to watch this video because in it I express a very powerful strategy that is really going to help you to align your creative, exploratory energies with your gender, sexual, or romantic exploration. All right, my friend, that's all I've got. I'll see you in the next one.